All right, ladies and gentlemen. Today is May 28th, Wednesday. We are about 13, 14 hours removed from one of the most disappointing games I have ever watched in my entire life. And I do not believe that's hyperbole. Maybe the most frustrated I've been throughout these playoffs with the head coach, Tom Thibodeau. And I'm going to be getting into that, discussing my thoughts on how the game was coached and why the Knicks lost the game and yada yada yada. Uh, but yeah, I mean that's about as deflating of a defeat as you'll ever see as a sports fan. And I'm gonna try to give you my objective analysis. I wasn't able to do a video last night because I was working Sirius XM NBA postgame show. But yeah, I'm just gonna try to you know encompass, bring all my thoughts together and present them to you here. Again, trying to be objective and try not to be too overly emotional. And maybe I'm glad I didn't do anything last night because I was really frustrated and needed to come back down to earth after, again, what I saw last night, which was pure incompetence and an extreme disappointment for me. And I'm sure for plenty of other Knicks fans out there. But either way, the Knicks are down 3-1 in a series which every game has been close and every game has been winnable for the Knicks. Obviously, we understand what happened in game one, losing that one in historic fashion. The Knicks don't blow, one of the worst games in NBA history. They don't blow one of the biggest leads down the stretch in NBA history. The series is 2-2 going back to New York with the Knicks still holding home court advantage. But that's not where we're at right now. And clearly that game, that collapse, set the tone for the rest of these playoffs among the Knicks' best players, among the Josh Harts of the world, the Mikal Bridges of the world. You saw an amazing game from OG Anunoby last night. You can't really group him into that group there. But all around the Knicks, that you heard it from in multiple post-game interviews. That Bridges said it, Hart said it, Tom Thibodeau said it, that the Knicks came out flat, that they lacked energy on both sides of the ball as compared to the Pacers, who played like they always do. They played exactly to their pace, up tempo, getting out in transition. They made the Knicks pay on almost every single one of their turnovers. The Knicks had 17 of them. We'll get into that a little bit later too. But the Pacers played their game, and that's why they won the game. And it's been said a multitude of times by a million different people out there. Whichever team plays best and whichever team allows the game to be best played towards their strength, which is for the Knicks, dominating the half-court offense. For the Pacers, obviously, it's getting out in transition and running and playing a high-tempo offense, would win the series. And through 4 games now, the Pacers have controlled the pace in all but one game, and that's why they're currently up 3-1. They're only 1 game away from making the NBA Finals. So it's extremely disappointing that we're at this point right now. There are plenty of people that deserve blame. There's plenty of blame to go around here. I believe that the coach last night, Tom Thibodeau, is the biggest reason why they lost the game, but he's not the one who's taking the shots. He's not the one who's passing the ball, who's turning the ball over. I understand that. And that's the argument being made by a bunch of different people out there. I believe other people saying, I believe Tom Thibodeau needs to trust his guys that he's trusted all year and not take guys out when they're not playing well and they clearly don't have it. I'm against that mindset. That's why I was so frustrated watching last night's game and watching Tom Thibodeau trust guys like Mikal Bridges, guys like Josh Hart, as much as he did last night, when clearly both of them did not have it. And we've seen an increasingly concerning trend throughout this series in that Mikal Bridges, who was acquired to be the other head of the two-headed snake between OG Anunoby and him on the wings, has not been able to do anything defensively against Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, the amount of times Tyrese Halliburton was able to get into the paint, able to facilitate, get his shot up, and I understand you want to call out and say, oh well, Mikal Bridges, he's having a million screens set on him and yada yada yada. I get that. I understand. But Mikal Bridges has done a terrible job getting around these screens and staying in front of Tyrese Halliburton. When you watch the Pacers, they do such a better job of sticking on their men. They do not get caught up in these screens. I mean, mainly because the Knicks don't really know how to set screens. Like when you see Josh Hart being the one to set the screen and the screen and roll action, when he provides you nothing in terms of like a potential threat from the pick and pop, you can understand why. If you really just do the research and look further into it, you understand that Josh Hart is the Knicks' best screener in that starting lineup. Karl-Anthony Towns, not a good screen setter. Mitchell Robinson obviously being, the one, but I'm talking about in the lineup that the Knicks have rolled out there as much as they have the entire season long. There is just such frustration for me in watching time and time and time again Tyrese Halliburton get into the paint and do what he does best, which is facilitate, or with his floater, or getting to the rim, or the threat that he obviously is from beyond the arc. And he played, and you got to give credit to Tyrese Halliburton. One of the best games that we've seen, probably one of the best games in Pacer playoff history. It might be one of the best games in playoff history, just as a whole. I mean, you look at what he did last night with this stat line: 32, 15 assists, and 12 rebounds. Just unbelievable. And you got to tip your cap to him. 0 turnovers as well, and 4 steals. And he was unbelievable on both sides of the ball. Amazing. I want to preface this, though, in talking about how amazing he played last night. The Knicks did not make it difficult on him whatsoever. Tom Thibodeau continued to allow Mikal Bridges to be the one on him, to get caught up in screens, to allow these easy mismatches the Pacers were generating, where Jalen Brunson was on Tyrese Halliburton. Karl-Anthony Towns was on Tyrese Halliburton. It was anyone but the guy who was supposed to be guarding him, Mikal Bridges. And straight up one-on-one, Mikal Bridges wasn't so bad. It was what he wasn't doing in terms of getting over the screens, playing good enough defense in the passing lanes where he was impacting the game whatsoever. He did none of that. He was terrible last night. Mikal Bridges, obviously people are going to point to that one play where he got the pass in transition. He was right under the basket. And instead of going up strong and potentially, generating a foul and going to the free throw line, he takes 2 dribbles out and takes one of the worst shots you will ever see, a contested fadeaway on a fast break. It's unbelievable. It really is. And I've seen it said around, and I tend to agree with the sentiment. There's a reason why Mikal Bridges hasn't missed a game since high school. Because he shies away from contact. Like, he does not actively seek out contact in order to draw fouls, in order to get the foul line. And he relies so heavily on that mid-range fadeaway that when it works is amazing. As we saw in Game 2 of the Boston series, it was lights out. It was automatic. But in this series, it's just been so bad. I don't understand the justification from Tom Thibodeau behind playing Mikal Bridges. I understand he's one of the guys that got you to this point. I understand that his defense is partially the reason why the Knicks beat the Celtics in 6 games. I understand that. Trust me. I get it. But at what point does a player's performance in game hold more weight than loyalty for a guy that you've given them all season long? We've seen Tom Thibodeau be extremely stubborn when it comes to his lineups. And for the first time all playoffs in Game 3, he finally switched it up. He allowed a lineup of Deuce McBride, Landry Shamet, DeLon Wright, Josh Hart, and Karl-Anthony Towns to share the floor at the exact same time in the fourth quarter for 3 minutes. And we didn't see that. We didn't see a guy like DeLon Wright, who was actually impacting the game in a great way. He is the highest game scorer out of any Knick, or not the highest game scorer. He's got the highest BPM, box plus minus. I mean, he's a plus 11 in this game. The other guy who was even close to him was Landry Shamet. Everyone else was nowhere near that. I get the plus minus doesn't tell you the entire story, but if you look at the minutes that he played, and yes, some of them were with Tyrese Halliburton off the floor, but when you look at the minutes that DeLon Wright and by extension Landry Shamet played over the course of that game, late on in the second quarter, what you saw was the Knicks finally slowing down the game and having success, not allowing the Pacers to get out in transition, to get everything they wanted. And that's even with Josh Hart turning the ball over every other possession with his four turnovers in that first half. I mean, he was unplayable. I think the Knicks could have gone up even more with him off the floor with DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet in the game. I just don't understand after what the Knicks saw, what Tom Thibodeau saw from DeLon Wright earlier on in the game, he still only plays him 9 minutes in this game. 9 minutes. And again, the Knicks had no answer defensively for whatever the Pacers were doing. And it's not like the Knicks had a bad game offensively. They still score over 120 points in this game. It was just their defense. Their defense killed them time and time again. And another thing we saw in game 3 was Tom Thibodeau finally showing willingness to stagger Brunson and Cat because of how bad the defense is with both of them on the floor. And last night, we barely saw any of that. I don't have the exact stats up here, but what I do know is that they played a lot of minutes together, a lot of minutes, and it's very frustrating. Again, I said this was probably the most frustrating game of these playoffs because you looked at what was happening on the court and you're screaming why are the same guys who are actively blowing this game still on the floor? Why is Josh Hart playing 36 minutes in a game he clearly doesn't have it? Why is Mikal Bridges playing as much as he did, 34 and a half minutes, in a game where he doesn't have it as well? I understand the sentiment the Knicks just do not have a great bench. But arguably the most important bench piece this entire series, and maybe against Boston as well, has been Deuce McBride. How good he's been in each and every single one of these games this series, and how he practically won them the game in game 3. And yet Deuce McBride plays 14 minutes in this game. 14 minutes. Everyone wants to look at the Knicks, missing some free throws, turning the ball over 17 times. They want to look at Jalen Brunson not getting the ball a lot in the fourth quarter. That's, your own prerogative if you believe in that being the reason why the Knicks lost this game. But I look at, and again, I understand Tom Thibodeau doesn't go out there and shoot the ball. He doesn't pass the ball in person. But it is his fault for riding guys that clearly don't have it, that are not playing efficient minutes, that are turning the ball over left and right, that don't mesh well defensively. I think it's inexcusable that you only played Deuce McBride 14 minutes. And yes, you can look at his minus 14 in the box score. I don't think that tells the entire story. I think what we saw from Deuce McBride in this series warranted him playing way more than he did last night. And I'm not going to say it's the main reason why the Knicks lost this game. I think it's one of them. I think the overarching theme here is that Tom Thibodeau did not do a great job mixing and matching his lineups like he did in game 3. He didn't experiment as much as he did in game 3. And I see all over social media. I mean, there's a select few people who believe in this, the idea that, Tom Thibodeau switching up the starting lineup in game 3 threw off all of the Knicks players, and that's why they lost this game. I think that's a joke. I think if you really believe in that, if you think that that's the reason why the Knicks lost this game, I have a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. I mean, I really cannot understand anyone who believes that. The Knicks only won game 3. Now, obviously, Karl-Anthony Towns scoring 20 points in the fourth quarter was the main reason why. But it was also because the Knicks experimented. Tom Thibodeau actually tried different things. And I understand, it took until game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals to get to that point. And people are looking at that and saying, well, how can you experiment that late in the season? Well, it freaking worked. It worked. It should have happened way earlier on in the series, but it didn't. And this is what the Knicks are dealing with right now. And instead of going with that same strategy in game 4, Tom Thibodeau reverted back to his old self. Trusting guys who don't have it. Trusting guys who have played a lot of minutes for them this season just because. Just because he wants to be loyal to the guys who got them here. And what we know, based off where the Knicks are right now, and based off all the advanced stats and analytics, the Knicks are not a good team with Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns sharing the floor. They're simply not. Defensively, you could look up their rating. I mean, I don't even need to tell you. I don't even need to give you an accurate number here. It's got to be at least 130, 140. The two of them combined, it's so easy to put them in screen and roll actions. It's so easy to set off ball screens and generate mismatches with those two being involved in every single action. You can't hide both defenders. You can hide one of them. You can't hide two. And here's where I'm at. The Knicks should have built this team to Tom Thibodeau's strengths as a head coach, which obviously defensive-minded, hard-nosed, tough mentality team. But they went out and traded for Karl-Anthony Towns without really considering, the makeup of the team, how that team would mesh together. And how it meshes together is the two best players on the team cannot share the floor at the same time. It's a disaster. It is. Because you obviously want to be in a position where offensively you'd be unstoppable. And yeah, we see with Cat and Brunson on the floor that the Knicks are a good offensive team. But they are so atrocious defensively with both those guys on the court. And I really believed going into this game that Tom Thibodeau was going to be willing to stagger both of them. I said before the game, you could only play them 10 to 15 minutes together the entire game. And I don't know exactly what it was, but they had to have played at least 20, 25 minutes together. And those minutes were terrible defensive minutes for the Knicks and practically won this game for the Pacers. I mean, you could not say worse things about Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges in this game. Mikal was terrible defensively, and he's so inept at getting around these screens. And yeah, you could give credit to the Pacers for Miles Turner, for Aaron Nesmith, whomever is at the top of the key setting these double screens at being good screeners and allowing Tyrese Halliburton to generate mismatches and to get into the paint extremely easy. Like, you got to give them credit for being good screen setters. The Knicks did not do a good enough job. And Mikal Bridges did not do a good enough job getting through these screens, staying in front of Tyrese Halliburton. He's too weak. He's too frail. He's a stick figure out there. He's a twig. And I understand you acquired him to be able to play defense against these quicker guards, whereas you'd want OG against the larger forwards, and you obviously want OG on Pascal Siakam. Like, I understand people out there want to put OG on Halliburton and try that out, but who the hell is going to guard Siakam? Siakam, I think, has been the most important piece for the Pacers this series. Like, Halliburton does not go off in the way that he has gone off without Pascal Siakam playing as well as he has. He's got everything offensively. He's a true three-level scorer. He can knock down the three. He's not one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, but he could hit the three at an effective rate. He could score in the mid-range, the high post, the low post. He's great in transition as well. And he could score in the paint with ease. He's been the unsung hero for the Pacers this series, and everyone's going to give the flowers to Tyrese Halliburton because of his big stat lines and his celebrations after the game and yada, yada, yada. Again, the only reason he's been able to go off is because Pascal Siakam has played nearly a flawless series. The series would be 2-2 right now. It could be 3-1 right now if it wasn't for Pascal Siakam, specifically what he did in game 2. He has a generational performance, shoots 60% from the floor, 39 points. That's what won them the game in game 2. So I think Tyrese Halliburton has to thank Pascal Siakam for allowing him to play as well as he has offensively, because you always got to keep an eye out for Pascal Siakam. And you cannot try OG Anunoby on Tyrese Halliburton because he's got to stay stuck to Pascal Siakam. And the Pacers aren't only amazing at generating mismatches for Tyrese Halliburton, but they're also amazing at generating mismatches for Pascal Siakam as well. Feels like every time Pascal Siakam catches the ball into the basket or in the high post, he's got a small defender on him that isn't named OG Anunoby. Like, it's Bridges. It's sometimes Brunson. I think maybe you could try out Anunoby on Halliburton and then see what Karl-Anthony Towns could do against Pascal Siakam. I don't think he'd do a good job. I think he'd almost immediately get into foul trouble, but I think it couldn't hurt. Like, at this point, backs against the wall, you got to try everything. The Knicks did that in game 3. They tried every single possible thing and won the game because of that. Then in game 4, they got complacent. And you heard from a multitude of guys on this Knicks roster and the Knicks coaching staff The Knicks did not come out with enough intensity. They didn't come out with enough energy to start the game, start the second half, and that's inexcusable. If you just have a bad game, you have a bad game. But if the entire team is admitting that they just didn't have it energy-wise, that's inexcusable. That's a major indictment of the head coach. Because when guys are not coming out with energy, they're not playing well, it doesn't look like they want to be out on the floor, you bench them. You bench them. High school basketball coaches do that. College basketball coaches do that. Rec league coaches do that. Guys are not hustling. If guys don't have the energy, they're benched. They're benched. They have an extremely short leash. And either they figure it out mid-game and start playing with energy, or they don't come back in. And Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges were at the crux of this. Like they were two of the two biggest driving forces behind the inept play and the lack of energy. Like that's on them. And I think a lot of people have said this, and I've been saying this since the start of the year. When Mikal Bridges plays well, the Knicks are almost unbeatable. He's not been good. He really hasn't, guys. He's been terrible. And defensively, you expect a lot more from him than he's given you. I mean, throughout the course of this series, his two best games came in the two games the Knicks should have won, the first game and the second game, that they didn't win the series. So it's very frustrating. And you look at, what Mikal Bridges did, in that game. And, the stat line, it should say a lot, a -13, 3 turnovers, 4 fouls. He does finish with 17 points. Somehow he goes 4 for 5 from 3. I think it's because 2 of those shots that he missed late in the game were long twos, which are even worse. Those are terrible shots. The long two is the worst shot in the game. And he took 2 of those, which he didn't hit. He makes all those shots down the stretch, then the Knicks are in the game, they potentially win it. And they're all wide open. And everyone wanted to, glaze Mikal Bridges' clutch gene. Where's that clutch gene been this series? Where is what we saw against the Celtics, particularly in game 2 of that series? Been non-existent. And it's really frustrating to have to sit down as a Knicks fan and watch this on a game-by-game basis. Like, the head coach just not playing the best players on the court, not trusting guys who have it. Again, I keep coming back to this. DeLon Wright, when he was on the court, the pace of play slowed down. Like, he played extremely well in the passing lanes like he has. He had that steal on Halliburton, who wasn't paying attention. He obviously had the double dribble, which was awful, terrible. And when he grabbed that steal on the the inbounds pass, he ends up taking a terrible shot at the rim, contested shot, doesn't score, and waste that opportunity. So he wasn't perfect. He didn't play a perfect game. But what he did give you were solid minutes. Then I said with the Deuce McBride, with the Mitch Robinson stuff, like plus minus, like that doesn't tell you the entire story. I don't need a plus minus. I don't need the plus 11 stat line for DeLon Wright to tell me that he played well in that game. He did. He simply did. And I don't think it's crazy to say that I would like to see what DeLon Wright has against Tyrese Halliburton. Like, he's one of the bigger, more physical defenders that the Knicks have. And he'd do a better job getting through screens than Mikal Bridges and Deuce McBride have been able to do. Like, you got to put a big body on Halliburton, who's also quick, could stay in front of him and get through those screens. And the Knicks may just have to sacrifice offensively just to get some stops defensively. Like, I just don't understand that, the mindset of Tom Thibodeau in that game. Playing the offensive-minded lineups instead of going with what worked defensively in game 3. The amazing job that lineup, like I mentioned, the DeLon Wright, Landry Shamet, like how good that lineup was at switching. And like, here's another thing that I've seen thrown out there: the lineup of Brunson, Deuce, OG, Mikal, and Cat has been a lot better than the lineup, obviously, with Josh Hart or the lineup with Mitchell Robinson. And I think Deuce McBride deserves to start game 5. I really believe that he does. and Tom Thibodeau's just got to go with what works. And what hasn't worked is this starting lineup and Josh Hart playing big minutes. Like, it just feels like it takes away from like Josh Hart's biggest strength is coming in off the bench and providing the energy, pushing the pace, grabbing big rebounds because he's got all that energy. I feel like it's counterintuitive to play him 36 minutes in a game like that. I really believe that. And again, I just don't understand the mindset from Tom Thibodeau of like, I'm going to play these guys. I'm going to ride them just because I've ridden them all season long. And it was that indignance with the starting lineup that has them in a hole right now. This Knicks team is a lot more talented than this Pacers team. A lot of people want to point to the lack of depth the Knicks have. I think if you gave Rick Carlisle the team that the Knicks have right now, he'd still go 9 or 10 deep. DeLon Wright deserves minutes. Cam Payne should be playing minutes. I don't think he deserves them, but if you got the most out of him, he would deserve to play minutes. But obviously, it's been terrible since the first game of the playoffs. Landry Shamet deserves to get minutes. He's a physical, tough defender. Can knock down the three, good 3-and-D guy. The fact that he's barely played throughout these playoffs is inexcusable. I think he's earned the minutes that he's gotten. I think he's earned even more minutes than he's gotten in this series. And then you got Deuce and Mitchell Robinson. And Tom Thibodeau, being a rigid head coach, has prevented the Knicks from experimenting and has prevented the Knicks' best bench players from getting a lot of run. Mitchell only plays 19 minutes. DeLon Wright plays 9. Deuce plays 14. It's really frustrating. It's really frustrating to watch. And again, what are you going to do? And I'm not going to play the game of like, where the Knicks go from here is does Tom Thibodeau deserve to be fired? I'm very frustrated with him. And I'm going to get to that at some point, probably when the season is over, maybe as soon as tomorrow. But man, I feel like the Knicks could have won the series by now with how things have shaken out. The game one loss and how it went down, I think will sting for a very long time. Because I don't think the Knicks are going to win the series. I don't think they have any chance. It's only been done 18 times in NBA history. Team coming back from 3-1. Most recent was 2020. So it's been a long-ass time. It really has. And I don't know. I think after seeing what the Knicks have shown you over the last 4 games, I understand they won Game 3 largely due to Karl-Anthony Towns' offensive output down the stretch of that game throughout the fourth quarter. But I don't know what this team has shown you in this series specifically. And I don't know what the head coach, Tom Thibodeau, has shown you in terms of lineups, in terms of, strategy, that could make you believe that the Knicks are going to win 3 games in a row. I understand the Knicks have won 3 games in a row multiple times this season. I think this is a completely different ballgame. In a playoff series, you see the other team a lot. You're able to make adjustments on the fly. It's way different than a 1-game sample size. A 3-game sample size against 3 different teams, I think it's completely different. It's just not even a good comparison. Like, the Knicks' issues have persisted throughout this series. They're not new. Tyrese Halliburton getting everything he wants offensively, getting into the paint very easily, facilitating, taking shots, step back threes, whatever. And how well they've been at how good of a job they've done at generating mismatches. Like, they do it so well. And the Knicks throughout the course of these playoffs, whether against Detroit, whether against Boston, and now against Indiana, have not been able to generate mismatches for their guys. There's a reason why Jalen Brunson, and everyone wanted to call it out. Jalen Brunson, obviously had a terrible fourth quarter. He took 3 shots. I think there's a reason why he took that many shots. It's because Aaron Nesmith gets through screens so well, because the Knicks just do not have guys who could set good screens. They don't. It sucks that, the Knicks' best player only takes 3 threes, 3 shots in the fourth quarter. What do you want him to do? Doesn't even take a 3. What do you want him to do? The Knicks look to Anunoby. They look to Bridges. Even Shamet took more shots in that fourth quarter than Brunson did. I get it. People want to point at that and blame that as why the Knicks lost. What are you going to do? Aaron Nesmith is an amazing defender. He's done the best job against Brunson. Dyson Daniels did a really good job against him when the Knicks played Atlanta. But Neesmith has been unbelievable on him throughout these playoffs. Definitely been the best defender on Brunson throughout the playoffs. Amen Thompson is Asor Thompson is much more gifted, I think, as a defensive player, but he's got a lot of growth to be had. I think Neesmith takes the cake there. Much more physical, bumps Brunson, doesn't allow him to get to his spots. And Brunson's going to score against anyone who guards him. Like, he's just that good. He's always going to get what he wants. But Aaron Neesmith has been amazing. And you heard about his ankle injury. He looked 110%. Like, didn't look like he had any ankle injury. The Knicks are down, 3-1. Series looks to be all but over. I'd obviously have a lot more hope if the Knicks actually showed some energy last night and came close. I'd have a lot more hope if I believed that the head coach was willing to change up the lineups in order to get stuff right, to get the best lineups in, to not play the two best players on the team together when they're clearly not able to defend well, that lineup. It sucks. It sucks. And again, I tried to be objective about it, try not to let my emotions get the best of me here. My lack of voice isn't from me screaming last night. I'm sure it comes as a surprise to many of you. Allergies are bad. And, I have no tears left to cry with this team. I wanted to scream. I screamed a lot in the first half. In the second half, I just accepted the fate. I haven't had much belief in the Knicks throughout the course of these playoffs when they've gone down. But you kind of got a sense last night that unless Tom Thibodeau changed up anything rotation-wise, matchup-wise, defensively, that, the Knicks were going to lose the game. Like, some things are certain in life. And I always say the death taxes, the Knicks losing and getting smoked defensively with Brunson and Karl Towns in the floor at the same time. It sucks. And you hope that, the Knicks' backs being against the wall like they were in Game 3 will bring about some change in the rotations from Tom Thibodeau. And maybe the Knicks get lucky and the Pacers have a terrible game offensively and the Knicks win. And sure, that would be great, but I just don't see a possibility the Knicks win this series unless Tom Thibodeau switches it up, stops being so rigid. And it remains to be seen. I said this before last night's game that, I have hope that Tom Thibodeau finally learned his lesson. He would be willing to go with the bench more, to be willing to play Deuce 25, maybe 30 minutes, to ride Mitchell Robinson, to not play Josh Hart as much. And you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Tom Thibodeau plays Josh Hart 36 minutes, Mikal Bridges 34. That's your game right there. And everything else combined, the turnovers from Josh Hart in the first half, the 4 turnovers, led to, I think, as many points the Knicks lost by. So I think there's your game as well, the Knicks sloppy play. But those two doom the Knicks. For the life of me, I will never understand playing Josh Hart as much as they did, as much as he's been doing. But that's all I got for today. Need to take a beat. Need to eat some lunch. And just relax and chill. There's more to life than basketball. There's more to life than the Knicks, surprisingly. Trying to keep that mindset and not allow the pain to get to me like it has, throughout the course of the last 7 months. The Giants having the worst season in franchise history. The Yankees, of course, blowing that World Series. I know they lost in 5, and people think they didn't have a chance. What happened in Game 1 was an atrocity and set the tone for the rest of the series. And guess what? What happened in Game 1 of this series was an atrocity and set the tone for the rest of this series as well. And you'll probably get a win tomorrow night to give the Knicks and the fans false hope, just like you saw with the Yankees in Game 4, that blowout. And then, of course, what they did up until the 5th inning in Game 5. And I think you'll see the same with the Knicks. Like, they're going to show fight, they'll win the game, and then in Game 6, they're going to look good and they're going to blow it. But I just hope that the Pacers don't close out the Knicks at the Garden. That would be extremely demoralizing and be a terrible end to the season. But yeah, that's all I got. Stay tuned for One Giant Step tomorrow morning. I'll be talking about that, OTAs, whether or not Jameis Winston is still going to be on the field and on the roster. by week 1. This is obviously more exciting than whatever the hell's going on in this Knicks series. So stay tuned for that. That'll be posted on my page and Sean's page. So until then, I'll talk to you all very soon. Peace.